Hello everyone and welcome to AIS platform and today another subject I am bringing to share with all of you, and this is related with the ancient grains and why they are becoming so popular nowadays. But then the most important part what we would like to discuss is how we should eat them. I think all of you will agree that yes, nowadays whenever we talk about our nutrition or some aspect of gut health, many of us are very clearly understanding that eating wheat is not that great because it gives you so many complications. And then we try to look into some other options. And in the other options we talk about these ancient grains, and in ancient grains whether we talk about buckwheat, whether we talk about millet, whether we talk about amaranth, sorghum and quinoa, there are so many of these ancient grains which has been used for centuries, but they are coming back now again. But the sad part is that people are adopting and people are moving towards these grains, but still have so much problem related not only with the gut but many of other ailments. You name it, whether we talk about simple gastroenteritis issues, whether we talk about IBS, whether we talk about colitis, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, indigestions, hyperacidities, reflux. These are the common sort of problems where people think that something is going wrong with my gut, and then on top of that, celiac is one of the major ailment nowadays, which force our specialists, gastroenterologists, as well as dietitians, nutrition, they will be advising you that you should be avoiding wheat and then look at some other options. But first of all, we need to understand that what is going wrong in wheat. Now when we talk about wheat exactly is not as bad as it is now being talked about. And then no one tell you that what suddenly has gone wrong in the wheat. Wheat is a staple grain which has been used throughout the world at a wider level. But suddenly a lot of us start having problems with the wheat consumption. Now one need to understand what has gone wrong suddenly. If you look at from Ayurvedic perspective, and even when I will talk a little bit more on the celiac disease, which is nowadays the biggest concern, and I hope there might be some of us today listening to this discussion who might have graduated either in their medicine, either in the Ayurvedic medicine, or as a dietitian or a nutritionist in 1970s. And if we talk about that time and look at our physiology and pathologies book, you will be able to endorse it that celiac disease was not even talked about in those pathologies book at that time. It is only in the last 2 decades that this ailment has surfaced and being talked now by gastroenterologists a lot. The moment you have any issues with your gut, whether it is your hyperacidity, whether it is indigestion, whether it is gastritis issues or bleeding or something, vomiting, you will be termed that you are celiac, you should not use wheat. And the same is with the dietitian and the nutritionist. But no one give you an answer, no one tell you that the way you are consuming your wheat is the primary issue. And when we talk about the way you are eating your grain, and wheat is something we are talking here, that is where the role of Ayurvedic nutrition come in. While Ayurvedic nutrition talk about your carb, fat, protein, and other components which are the key constituent of your daily consumption, daily diet. But Ayurveda never talk about that you should just use 50 gram of this, 80 gram of your protein and 20 gram of your fat or like that. One thing major what Ayurveda talk about, that how you prepare these different kind of grains or legumes or other component or even your veggies. So preparation is the key component. And now under that part, just to share very briefly, because we will not be taking a nutrition subject in today's talk, itself is such a big subject to talk about. But on a simple note, what Ayurveda talk about, that whenever you are going to mix your wheat with yeast, which is nothing but of your bread, and bread has become nowadays a staple diet with many of us. All 3 meals will have somehow bread in that. And then when we are looking for the problem, no one talk about that it is your yeast when mixed with the wheat is causing you the problem. They will only say, okay, white bread you need to remove. Then someone will jump into wholemeal wheat, someone will go into multigrains wheat, some might go into organic wheat, and that's where they will start saying that I am eating multigrain bread and it is perfectly fine, but problems still persist with them and they don't even think of that what is causing the problem. And that is where this simple Ayurvedic understanding comes up, that when you are eating your bread, out of your 21 meals, even if it is more than 15 times, bread is a part of your diet. What you are eating is wheat mixed with the yeast, and that's where the biggest problem in the gut. And when we are able to remove, many people, even they are being termed as celiac, their problems start getting better. Yes, you have to definitely look at other incompatible food or other variants which that client might be eating need to be taken care of, but here we are talking about the wheat as a grain and the way people eat. If you eat flat bread, to many people it will be wonderful and many problems will be taken care of. But saying so, we do need to agree that the way the wheat is procured nowadays and all the pesticides and all those various chemicals are used in these crops nowadays has really changed the wheat character. And wheat definitely is heavy to digest, and if your gut is already compromised, you will always have problems. Hence people are trying to get out of that. But now question here is for us to discuss is the ancient grain. When I talk about ancient grain, and as I said, in India, in Ayurveda, these ancient grain has been staple diet of majority of the population, especially the jowar, bajra is what we talk about, and those are nothing but your millet. And whether we talk about your finger millet or whether we talk about your pearls millet, there are so many varieties. And even today, India is the biggest grower of these ancient grains, and that's what they are supplied all over the world. And people are nowadays using these different grains, especially the millet and then buckwheat, all. But question is why we should use them and how we should use them. That is where the same issue comes up, that even if you are using these ancient grain, which are rich source of various minerals, they are rich source of fiber, they are rich source of various magnesium, your folic acids, other kind of our minerals and vitamins, then why I am not getting all what I should be able to get out of these? Problem is the way we are consuming them. Now if we talk about our millet, in which we have various varieties of millet, which are known as in Ayurveda ragi, rajgiri and jowar and bajra, they have to be used in a specific way. And if we are not going to use them the way they have been described, they cause the problem. And these all ancient grains can be used as a whole in your breakfast options, in your lunch and dinner you can make the bread out of them. But now the way people eat these grains, let's discuss that. Many will say that I eat quinoa in the morning, or I eat millet in the morning as a breakfast grain. Now to eat them, what they do is they will soak overnight these grains. Amaranth is a very common one, quinoa very common one to be using for that, and sorghum is another very common which people use for breakfast, and they use them as a grain. So what they do is they soak them overnight, and in the morning they will put all different kind of nuts in that, and then on top of that they will put yogurt. In summer this is where their staple breakfast option will be, and then they can add some blueberries on top of that and have this wonderful breakfast. Every ingredient what they have used has its own value as an independent, but when they are combining this in this format, that becomes the most incompatible combination from Ayurvedic perspective, and that is where it leads to causing problem in your gut, and hamper your metabolism. Again, no one ever advised them. They keep eating and then slowly they start getting all gut related problems which I mentioned. And one wonder, I am eating all these healthy grains. I am now away from all the wheat part also. So gluten is out of my life and still I am having these problems. That is where you will see Ayurvedic nutrition principle comes up. When we talk about Ayurvedic nutrition principle in relation to these grains, what is being talked about is same principle as it will be applied in any other substances. Ayurveda talk about that each of these has different kind of qualities. And when we talk about the qualities of these millet and buckwheat or amaranth, they are all heavy, they are dry, they are rough. Now, the way you are eating, first of all, as I mentioned in your breakfast option, what you are doing is, you are eating those whole grains, just soaking them and not cooking them. And in Ayurveda, it is very clearly stated that if you are eating grain as raw, you are inviting problem. And what kind of problems? They will be impacting your rasa dhatu, mamsa dhatu, meda dhatu. That is why people will be suffering from different kind of, even they might be the benign cysts, tumors, fibroids, and then lot of a gut related issue at a first place, because they will be impacting your intestinal lining and the intestinal villi. And that's the one aspect. Now someone will say, I eat all these millet and buckwheat and amaranth and other grains as flour, and then I cook them. And when you ask them how they cook it, again in the morning they will be adding milk. They might add milk and yogurt and then some fruit, and that's what they will eat as a staple breakfast, because too much heat, too much summary part, and everyone saying, I want something cooling, and that's what they mix. Mixing fruit, mixing milk, mixing yogurt is already an incompatible combination, and then eating grain even in the flour form, another issue they are inviting. Then some might be a little bit more aware, and they will eat these grains by making bread. Again, they chosen the best grain to make use of that, but then again mixing yeast with that is going to cause problem to some extent anyway, because that's where the fermented component comes in. Even though the fermented food, we will talk about at some stage that why they are so much bad nowadays, even though in ancient times and even in Ayurveda the role of fermented food is talked about, but the way we are consuming and before consuming, not looking at our state of digestion and gut is the core cause behind that, but we will not go in that direction. So stick with these ancient grains. So what Ayurveda talk about, that you should use these grain. They are very rich source of various minerals, calcium, iron, fiber, but use it in a correct way. So now someone will say, what is the correct way? Correct way is very simple, because these grains are very dry, very rough, very heavy. You need to use a lot of ghee in them. When you are preparing, even say you are preparing a bread out of any of these grains, and I'm talking about the flat bread without yeast, which is wonderful. And once you have cooked, made the dough, and now again Some of us do make the bread, do make the non-yeast bread, but then if you look at the way they have made the dough, they will be very crumbly. They have difficulty to put it into a bread form, the flat bread form, and then it will not be cooked. Even if someone able to cook, when they eat miles away from any kind of oleation with them, because this is another concept has been put it into their brains that oil, fat, most dangerous substance for you, and you will get a high cholesterol or this and that problem. But no one understand that when you are eating these grains which are heavy to digest, dry and raw, they're going to cause more complication in your gut if they have not been well cooked, they have not been made dough in a right format, right amount of water has been used, and then when you cook it, if it has not been cooked, it will lead you more and more gut problem. So that is the prime reason that when you are eating these grains, yes, take my word, and I am sure you all understand anyway that these are very good grains nowadays to use, because we all are getting so much gut problem, and yes, wheat is becoming the biggest culprit, so leave that apart. But when you are using these grains, especially your millet and your buckwheat, use them in a correct format. And there are various varieties of millet which are very, very good, and as I mentioned, Ragi, Rajgiri are the two best millet which every one of us should use. Then we talk about the jowar part, and then buckwheat is there. So these are the ways you should use these grain. First is learn how to make the right format of your dough, how you should be adding water, what kind of water need to be added, and then the kneading part and all that you need to learn. And then how to make those bread. Then some of us will make so thick bread, and then when they cook, the whole grain has not been well cooked to the inside part, and that also causing them problem. And that is the reason, in spite of eating so good grain, we always still suffer from so many gut problems. Hence I thought I will give you a little bit insight that don't blame these grains. These grains are best to use, but use them in a correct format. Either you are using whole, either you are using flour. That is the message from my side. Means from Ayurvedic perspective. Ayurveda give you the so much understanding when it comes to the nutrition part, because without being judgmental, I'm sure every one of you will understand nutrition is becoming nowadays the biggest, foremost consideration for every practitioner. But the level of understanding and the level of knowledge what Ayurvedic nutrition gives to any client or any practitioner who are learning Ayurveda is beyond any comparison. And the reason why nutrition has become so much foremost, because every one of us is understanding that gut is your doorway of your problem, which has been the backbone of whole Ayurvedic learning and Ayurvedic nutrition from thousands of years ago. What is being understood by nutritionists, dietitians, medical doctors, functional medicine practitioner, integrated medicine practitioners today, that gut is the core cause. This has been well established, well talked about in Ayurvedic practice, and that's the reason whenever you visit to an Ayurvedic practitioner, and again those practitioners who talk about traditional Ayurveda, they will always give you that in-depth understanding that if you are going to eat your grain, how you should eat them, and what time you should eat them, what you should combine with, and then how to make your meal as a balanced one, not just the protein dominant, not just the fat dominant, and not just the carb dominant. That is what in Ayurveda we talk about thali, balanced thali. Thali means plate, that what you are serving to an individual, each of these components will be the main ingredient to make you a balanced meal. And that's what we all should learn, and that's what Ayurvedic nutrition is all about. Thanks everyone, and hope this is something you can give a bit of consideration and save yourself from many problems which you might be suffering, or the coming time you can prevent these problems happening to you, because look after your gut and then your gut will look after you. Thanks everyone.